Hey, in today's video, we are talking about midlife awakening. So welcome to the Midlife Freedom Podcast. My name is Lindsay DeSwart. Great to have you here. Thanks for joining. So normally I do the podcast, it's just audio, and today it's different because it's video. So I might be using my hands a lot if you're watching the video, but if not, if you're listening to the audio, so pleased to have you here. Thank you for joining. And so let's jump right in. So today we're going to learn all about how you go through life building up these barriers around you and how you sort of shape your beliefs until you get to a point where you're challenged and then you're wondering why, like, what the heck just happened? Things were going so well and now they're not. And now I feel like I'm having some midlife breakdown, and that's okay because it's all perfectly normal. And I'm just going to tell you why, explain it to you so you can understand what exactly is going on in this old term midlife crisis, or in this new term, which I heard about earlier this morning, which I love. And in fact, I'm going to share this quote with you because it's so cool. Okay, so the quote is, and I'm just looking at the notes if you're following the video, why my eyes are all over the show. Okay, the reason they want us to believe that it all goes downhill after 35 is that that's when you get your superpowers, and they're afraid of what you'll do with them. I love that. Okay, so when we are women and we hit midlife, all of a sudden we get this monumental shake-up. And it can happen for a bunch of reasons, and it can show up in many different ways. And for some people, they just breeze through it and they just get away, easy peasy as far as I'm concerned. And you'll understand why as I go through the explanation. But I'm getting so enthusiastic, this video is shaking around a bit. Okay, so let's kind of wind all of this back. Why do we, what would cause us to have this sort of awakening? And whether you say it's a midlife awakening, a spiritual awakening, a born again awakening, when you kind of wind it back, it will show up in many different ways, and it doesn't actually matter which one it is at this stage. Obviously, the experience afterwards, that's when it really, I guess, comes into its own. But so let me just wind it right back. And it's funny because when I've been working with people coaching, this is sort of the initial conversation that we always have when they're saying, everything's going well. I should be so grateful for my life. I should be, I've got a great partner. I've got lovely kids. I've got a nice house. And so why am I feeling like I'm feeling? So this is the conversation that we have. It's like the bare foundation of it all. Right. So think of yourself as a child. When you're a child, you go through your life experiences, and that can be a wealth of different situations, depending on where you live, what your family situation is, what the wealth situation was, religion, family, all sorts. It can be so many different things. But if you think about the fundamentals, you're this little child with only the resources that you have as an infant and as a child growing up. And then with the resources you have, you make decisions about the world that's happening around you. And so the world that's happening around you can mean that you might be treated different ways. Like if you fall over when you're a kid, were you encouraged just to, get back up and there's no problem? Or was it, parents would rush you and go, oh, are you okay? Whichever way that happened, that will influence the decisions you made about falling over and getting back up again. And I'm sure you've seen it with your own kids. So that's the first thing. Then as you go to school, is school kind of sold to you as going to be, oh, you're going to make so many friends, it's going to be a great opportunity, you're going to learn so much, you're going to have so much fun? Or is it like, oh, school, it's big school and, well, it might be scary and there's big kids and there's a whole bunch of pressure on you, you've got to succeed at school. Again, this will influence your outcome of how you feel about school. So just the smallest, it can be what you think might be the smallest external influence can create you to come up with some very interesting belief systems and perspectives about your next experience. But what's so interesting about those is you take those experiences, and you made them when you had the resources of a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7, 8-year-old as you grow up. But then you take them and you keep building on those. So imagine that you've got yourself, and then let's say a belief system becomes like a piece of scaffolding around you. And then each time you get a challenge or something happens in your life, you put up another bit of scaffolding. And so gradually, when we get to be adults, we've got all of this scaffolding around us. And that's what shapes your life. And it will shape, the type of job that you go and get, and how resilient you are, and how you feel about exercise, and how you feel about food, and how you feel about money. And this is what people call these limiting beliefs. So I prefer to call them like scaffolding, because then you can understand why you feel like you do when things start to happen, like midlife happens, or you get, so for example, maybe your parents divorce when, you're younger, or let's just, you lose a job, you finish school, you finish university, you're on the job market. All of these beliefs or scaffolding will shape your reality of how you feel and what you believe about yourself and what you believe about the world outside you, because that's a key part. What you believe about the world outside you and how you're showing up in the world. And the reason I say this, and excuse me, and the reason it's so important is because you can get two people, let's just say job interview. You get two people showing up for a job interview, and one of them will have a completely different perspective about what this job is, what this job offers, what you need to be, if it's a challenge, if it's easy, if it's above them, if it's beneath them. They will have a completely different perspective than this other person. And the reason these two people have such different perspectives is because of their scaffolding systems, basically, around them, what they believe to be true about themselves and about the world. And obviously that comes in with things like your religion, your education, your family upbringing, your wealth status. All of these things shape this scaffolding around you. So what happens when you're challenged? And let's say, because we're here, let's talk about the midlife challenge, is you get to the stage energetically when you're growing up and your personal growth is such that you've developed such skills and such experience and such knowledge, and even like social circumstances, you've grown so much that you then start to break this scaffolding. You start to expand out of the sides of this scaffolding. And so obviously that's when you start going, oh, hold on a minute. I don't know that I do believe that, actually. And maybe the school system wasn't cracked up as it's meant to be. And perhaps what I've been told is really important isn't as important. So this whole scaffolding system starts to fall. It starts to fall down. And if you're lucky, it falls down bit by bit. But for some people, the whole lot, you literally bust out of this scaffolding structure. And it's like, oh my God, my world is falling apart. This is a midlife crisis. This is a spiritual awakening. This is an energetic awakening, whatever you want to call it. Everything that you've known about the world, you start to question, because all of this scaffolding has fallen around you. Now, all is not lost, of course, because it means that you've grown and you've expanded. And unfortunately, menopause, that often means physical expansion too, but that does come into it as well. But what's happened is you've outgrown that frame that you had of what the world looks like. And all the time that you were focusing on a job, or you're focusing on your kids and raising the family, that structure held itself together really nicely. And you built on it, and maybe, you got a bigger house and you got a bigger car and all the rest of it that we do. And now that the kids have gone and you're in a different situation, it's caused that structure to fall down, which is why you're now going, hold on a minute, I want more purpose. I can't even remember what I do for fun. Like, where's my passion gone? And that's why. So if you picture in your head that there's you with this scaffolding basically all around you, and you're going, okay, so imagine that you are literally looking around, as you do, you kind of raise your eyes and go, okay, what is this all about? That's exactly the questions you're asking. So what do we do about it? So what we do about it is, the first place that you should start looking is inside. So when I say inside, that's why you might be drawn to finding out or finding ways to, do things like yoga, to learn about the chakras, to learn about your energy systems. And all of these are really, really good things to do. If you haven't sort of discovered them, you haven't got into them yet, they're really good things to do. So learning about your chakra systems, which are energy portals throughout your body, learning to do grounding. So when I say learning to do grounding, that you can do, it's very often just being out in nature is a really good way to learn to do grounding, because it allows your whole energy field to actually balance and to become more in tune with the earth. And I mean, you've probably seen grounding sheets advertised, and some people have great success with them. So that's one way. And I think you can even buy ones that go under your bed. I think you can get links on Amazon for those. You can get links all over the place for them, but definitely you can get links on Amazon for them. The other thing to do is you can walk barefoot on the grass. Even through the winter, you can do that. And that's why there is such a nurturing belief about forest bathing. I don't know if you've ever heard of forest bathing. So you're just walking out in nature. It's as simple as that. And that's the beauty about when you wake up to like this spiritual awakening. I keep saying it's a spiritual awakening because it kind of, you start to look for answers around you. You start to see how you fit in with the world, how the world works, how the seasons change, and how you change with it, and how you go through seasons as well. Because you can see as you've gone through your life, with the education and work and family, and then what happens afterwards, you move through seasons. We all move through seasons. And so you start to notice actually that you are more like nature than when you're busy and kind of, in the rat race almost. You don't really give much thought to how you fit in with nature. But actually, the more thought you give it, the more you can go with nature, and the more balanced you feel, the more grounded you feel. So I'm going to give you a couple of techniques. So one of them, obviously, as I said, about grounding is walking barefoot on the grass, getting into nature, being out in the forest. The other thing to do is with meditation. You can start doing meditation. And as you start to do meditation, you make the time for your head to become more quiet. Now, one way I really like to do meditation, and I'll do actually a whole nother episode on this, but one of the things that I like to do is actually just set a timer, because then you put a lot less pressure on yourself about, how am I going to do this? Am I doing it right? I've got thoughts in my head. Oh no, it's all going wrong. You don't need to do that. If you can give yourself a piece of time, a short amount of time, short, long, it's up to you, amount of time to sit with quiet. And there's even walking meditation, even getting out in the forest does this. You start to learn more about who you are, and you start to base less on the scaffolding or the structures or the belief systems that used to be so true and almost kept you safe as you grew through life. Because those belief systems, they had a purpose. Absolutely. They kept you safe. They gave you context. They gave you structure. And it's only now that you've kind of busted out of them that you're questioning stuff. And it doesn't feel safe. I've got to be honest. It doesn't feel safe. You don't feel like you got it all together. It can feel really unsettling, really emotional. And one of the reasons is because all of a sudden this scaffolding that has kept you safe, as that falls away, there is an energetic release that goes with that. And the energetic release may well be physical symptoms. And physical symptoms, emotional, friendships change, relationships change. You might get an urge to move somewhere new. All of these are signs that you are having this awakening, and it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. It means that you've just outgrown your existing structure, but it's okay. because that's evolution. Now, the difficulty is kind of managing the process whilst you're going through it, because it can be really difficult. And I truly believe to my core, and a lot of the teachings that I've followed now for years, is that menopause actually is more about this awakening and more about the fact that our whole structure, we've outgrown our structure. And so a lot of the symptoms of menopause, personally, I believe, not a medical doctor, so don't quote me on this, I believe are the fact that all of our energetic systems are due for a reset, because everything that we have dealt with and all of our coping mechanisms, i.e. that scaffolding, all of that has fallen away, which then means that you are left kind of in this open air space and feeling like you just want to get rid of, old beliefs, anything that's lingering, which is when people start talking about healing. And when people start talking about healing, that's when you're going to hear terms like chakras, energy, clearing out old limiting beliefs. And that's when you might be called to do things like Reiki, maybe go to sound baths, a gong bath, a meditation circle, an energy healing session. All of these are a beautifully supportive way to help you get through this scaffolding breakdown. Now, looking forward, which is the really exciting part in all of this, because it's not actually all doom and gloom. That's just a bit like, we've got this far. The fact that you've got this far and you've outgrown your life and all this scaffolding falls away is cool, kinda, because it now means that you get to create the next chapter, which is fantastic. And in creating that next chapter, what that means is you get to choose what structures do you then put in place to help you create this next chapter. And just like that quote said about after 35, 35, I'd say 45, you get to tune into who you really are and your superpowers. The more self-discovery you do, the more you'll find your superpowers, and the more you will realize that you are very unique and we're all in this together. So you may have heard the terms collective. We are all together in this. We all bring something to get us through this phase of life. And we all have different skills and different abilities and different energy. And the more that we can work together in harmony, if that feels good, that feels good within your soul and within humanity. So, blimey, that got big, didn't it? So basically, this next chapter is all about creating, or this next part is all about creating your next chapter. What is it that's really important to you? Because that new scaffolding that you start to put up actually is made up by what's important to you. So you're finding out what's important to you. You're finding out what your natural skills and talents and abilities are, where you want to invest, confirmation, but where you want to invest your time, money and energy. And then also how what new relationships that you really feel help you to move forward rather than hold you back where that old scaffolding used to be, but actually, it's no longer there for you. So in creating that next chapter, the things that are really helpful are things like finding your passions, really tuning into those, and again, finding out your values, what's important to you. So at the beginning of this new year, it's a really lovely opportunity to start thinking about what intention do I want to set for the year? What things do I want to do that fill my time, but also fill my heart with joy? Bring me more energy, bring me more excitement. The people I want to spend my time with, the things that I want to do, places I want to go, and really harness into this kind of more adventurous, wild side of you. And it's a beautiful time to get into that which is why people think, you know, midlife women may absolutely be losing it, because all of a sudden we're willing to try stuff that we may not have done before, or we've got a new interest or a new activity. So again, on Instagram, I posted just the other day about while swimming and how many midlife women it appeals to. And it might just be that it's that whole idea of you want something new, you want something invigorating, you want something energetic, you just want something that makes you feel alive. And so, you know, while swimming is one of the things that I do. Anyway, so I don't want this to go on for too long, but so I've given you some methods in there, but that's the whole kind of the theory of what's going on. So when I talk about spiritual awakening, which I will frequently, I don't talk about it in the sense of, you know, you're having a religious experience or you found God or anything like that. I love to help you deal with it in a very practical way. So one of the things, so I say a very practical way, and then I was going to say, and actually that's why I pulled a card, because to me that's really practical. Okay, so let's have a look. So the card that I actually pulled for you is the water card. And the water card is a beautiful card because obviously, as I say, the more we flow in nature, we need to be fluid. There is nothing rigid. We are always changing. Life is always changing. Situations around us are always changing. So the water card felt like an absolutely beautiful sort of transition from the old into the new. So let me, I will share the explanation with you just from the guidebook. And by the way, this card, these cards are the Mystical Shaman Oracle by Alberto Villoldo and Colette Baron Reed and Marcella Lobos. There we go. So it's one of my favourite decks. I love it. Okay, so the water card is, the essence of that card is water symbolises purification, regeneration, birth, revival and cleansing. It signifies an evolutionary shift from former self to new self. Many myths around the world speak of a great flood and the new life that's revealed after a deluge. Water begins without boundaries. Then, as soon as the form has separated itself from water, it comes under the laws of time and life, thus acquiring limitations. How perfect is that for exactly what we're talking about? The more we expand, the more limitations we put on ourselves until a time when we actually just burst out of those limitations. And as we burst out of those limitations, then we become free. Then we become really fluid and flowing and inquisitive and curious again about life, but without boundaries, without structures, without restrictions, without scaffolding. So while it can feel unsafe and a little bit unhinged, that's also how you start to step into this beautiful flow of your superpowers and of who you really are. Okay. So I hope that really helps. Slightly different video, and slightly different podcast episode. So if you've enjoyed this, please go and look at the other podcast episodes or listen to them. They're all on YouTube under Lindsay DeSwart. So pleased that you're here. If you've enjoyed this, please subscribe. If you're still here at the end, oh my God, thank you. So just type the word water so that I know you've made it all the way through to the end. And any questions, just post them in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Okay. Thank you so much. I will see you in the next video. Bye.